kind of on in with one of the dumbest things that I don't know, that there's kind of funny. So are you ready, Derek?
Yes, I'm
Okay.
ready.
Okay, so so first of all, and I know you may not be as fascinated about this as I am, but here we go. Derek Wessman, what time is it where you are right now?
Yeah, it's 9:56 p.m.
9:56 in the PM. I came into my office. This is how much of a Derek fan I am. It is 4:56 in the AM here
It's
in
good.
I can't even call it sunny California because it's dark California right now. But
Yeah.
I have to tell you, just from my experiences traveling abroad, when I have clients in my office, and sometimes they'll come in and they'll be tired. They're I'm wiped out. I just got back from Colorado, and that time difference, it's an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know where I'm going with that, right? Yeah.
It's hard not to, get a chuckle. I mean, you don't want to poo-poo anybody's experience, but yeah.
Right, but now you do a fair amount of international travel. I mean, how do you adjust to that jet lag? Jet lag for you is an entirely different thing, right?
Yeah, it's I guess it helps to exercise. It helps to try and stay up until it's time to go to bed, local time when you arrive, but you just gotta accept that you're going to be working really tired.
Exactly, right. And I always think about that when we have gone over to Japan, especially working with you.
Hmm.
That time difference, we get there, right? We've lost a day. It's 8 o'clock at night, maybe in Japan. You come pick us up at the airport, tell us to stay awake the whole time back to Tokyo. It's what, a 2 hour drive? Is that right?
Yeah, it's like trying to keep an injured person conscious. You're like, trying to slap them and stuff.
I mean,
Exactly.
yeah, you'll see our eyes going down. You're like, so what else is going on, and then you feed us. I mean, I always have these fond memories of, and we'll get into that, boy, the food part of Derek. With I remember one time in particular, I feel like you almost saw us dropping, and you pull over at this Asian kebab place somewhere in
Yeah.
Tokyo, right? Remember that?
Right.
Yeah,
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 that
yeah.
became the place.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's like if we can make it up till then what 10 o'clock local time, then we go to bed. But then we wide awake at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning or whatever. And I always feel
Yeah,
like by the time you get adjusted, then it's time to go back home. And then
exactly.
the travel back home is brutal. So where are you at right now?
So I'm in Kyushu, the western part of Japan.
Western part of Japan.
Yeah,
Okay.
not far from the city of Fukuoka,
Oh,
but a
okay.
little bit more rural area. Yeah.
Oh, you just blew my mind with all the additional things that we can talk about. I mean, you've done a lot of service there as well, right? I mean, some of the I remember in particular with one of the earthquakes, and do you know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, the Great East Japan earthquake that happened in March 2011.
Yeah, yeah. What was that like
Yeah,
for
I
you?
was I was I was living in Tokyo and just living life. I had a 3-year-old daughter and a pregnant wife with the second kid, and the earthquake was really big. It shook Tokyo pretty badly, but not much damage. But up in northeastern Japan, it was really really bad. A big tsunami hit. So I had two buddies who were working in Tokyo as lawyers, both from the U.S. and we all had the time to get out of work for a week and a half or something, and so we went up there and helped out a little bit.
Wow.
But it was a good experience. Yeah.
So, and it's funny in my notes, I hadn't even thought about the earthquakes. I mean, the only earthquakes I've really been through have been when I've been in Japan. I've felt a few of those. I mean,
Mhm.
what's the biggest one you felt?
Oh, that it was probably well. That earthquake was really big. I was on a train almost back to my station, a couple hundred yards from the station when the earthquake hit, and we were stuck in the train for a couple hours, and then walked home on the tracks. But
Hmm.
when we went up to help, with just getting wreckage off of people's houses and yards and things, we were hit with another aftershock that was maybe in the seven magnitude or something range, and we were standing actually right on the coast, and this huge aftershock hit us, and it's literally like the ground's waving up and down,
Wow.
undulating in a really weird way. But
Yeah.
we were just really afraid of a tsunami coming again, so we jumped in the truck and drove really fast to get out. But
You did.
it
Okay.
was, yeah, earthquakes are definitely, if they're just small and nobody gets hurt, they're kind of interesting, they're kind of fun. But in that case, it was pretty terrorizing.
Do you feel like you ever get used to that feeling? I mean, that the whole world is moving kind of a feeling?
Well, little earthquakes, you get used to those,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah. I
I
do.
was interpreting. I was interpreting a couple of months ago a company's board meetings, and they were actually talking about their earthquake contingency plans when an earthquake hit.
It did.
And we were on the 50th floor having this meeting, and we're swaying, a couple
Oh.
meters back and forth, and everybody's had a good laugh when it was over and got back to the planning.
Okay,
Yeah.
now can you, in those situations where you're doing some international business, do you watch, I mean, can you tell who's American and who's not? You watch people just go white? I mean, is that,
Yeah, the less experienced people might not handle it as the same way, but
Yeah.
I think in that case, I was interpreting for an American who was over the phone in the U.S. and just had to give him the play-by-play. Actually, there's an earthquake happening. Just hang on. The Japanese folks were pretty used to it.
So I have to ask you if I have just made this up in my head, and I don't know if it was one of the times I was there with you or one of the earlier times, but I remember being in a restaurant and being pretty high up and feeling like something's just off, and then slowly everybody just started to grab their phone, and then if it was you, I can't remember. Somebody's like, oh, I think people are checking to see, I don't know what the the Richter scale reading was,
Yeah.
but the urban legend I made up in my own mind was that Japanese buildings are so prepared for it that we were almost like on rubber foundation, so we were gonna tilt.
Oh yeah.
Is that true?
Well, that's true. Most any building built to code now is on top of big rubber pads, and then it's just you have to have steel frame buildings that sway, and
Wow.
it's about absorbing and dissipating the energy rather than being rigid.
Okay.
Exactly.
And my friend Mark and I were just anybody see this? And everybody's just acting like it was business as usual.
Yeah, you check the phone. You want to know if it was really bad somewhere, and
Okay.
that the earthquake only shook you a little bit. You hope it wasn't like several hundred miles away and really hitting somebody.
Wow.
That's what
Okay.
most people I think are checking.
Okay, that makes more sense, right? So
Mhm.
talking about that, I mean, do you remember when we first met? Do you remember Do you remember the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saw a couple of white guys walk into the room.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah.
A whole
So,
bunch of Japanese folks gathered, and you guys came in the back.
yeah, we were trying to find a local church meeting, and we had walked by this building by our hotel in Hachioji a few times, and kept thinking they got to meet here at some point. And then I still can't believe that. I mean, that we weren't just it was an abduction. I mean, some guy comes up in a car, he doesn't speak any English, says get in. So we think sure, we're in the middle of Japan. A couple of foreigners, never been in that area before. We'll jump in this
What
car.
could go wrong?
Exactly. And then 45 minutes later, we're dumped off and at another church building. I don't remember where that was.
Yeah, down in Machida, about a probably 30-40 minute drive down.
Okay, jump in there. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, we're here. The old church thing feels okay. I don't have a clue what anybody's saying. And then we look up front, and there's a little redheaded guy who's doing the translation to people that were up on the stand, right? And that was
Yeah,
you.
exactly.
And then at the end of it, now we don't know what to do. And I know we ran to you because it was like, help us, please. You seem like a safe person. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Who are you guys? What are you doing?" And I remember at the time, I had just started my company not long before that. I was doing a lot of interpreting and translation and stuff, and you guys said you were here on business, and I'm like, wow, maybe I need to work with these guys.
Yeah. So yeah.
I could use some business. I'll drum up some business here at church.
And I still remember as well that your wife didn't make it to church that day, and you had a fairly small car, and so had she had come with your baby, or we would have been out of luck. I think you would have been.
That's right.
Pointing us to the subway, right?
Yeah, that was a tiny car, and then we just barely got you guys in there.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, so tell me what brought you to Japan?
Yeah, so I came to do service for a couple of years when I was 19.
Okay.
And before that, I had studied Japanese in high school.
Oh, you had?
Because my high school happened to offer a Japanese classes.
Okay.
So I took those 3 years through high school and kind of got the real basics of Japanese. But then I ended up getting sent to Tokyo, Japan, and so I had a chance when I was 19 to kind of be immersed in Japanese language and culture.
So when you first get there, I didn't realize you had taken it in high school. I mean, that's a pretty progressive high school. Do you feel?
Well, it happened to.
Okay.
But, it's not a high level. It's like when you take Spanish or French in high school. You don't come away, giving speeches or anything.
Well, and that's why I say I took 5 years of German, and I go to Germany, at that point in business, and I can't even talk to a taxi cab driver. I can ask where a croissant is, and and I'm stumbling all over the. Is it a male croissant or is it a female croissant, or maybe it's neutral. I mean, so when when you hit the ground in Tokyo, then do you feel that you were ready and then find out that you weren't, or did you know going in that okay, this is a whole different ballgame? Oh no, Derek.
Hey, sorry about that.
No, we're back. That I have to tell you, it's my first time
Okay.
that the connection is broken here on the virtual couch, and I had to worry. Earthquake? Or are you okay?
I'm okay.
All right.
Yeah, sorry. I think I'm on some hotel Wi-Fi here that wasn't handling well, so I switched over to Tether. I thought it'd be good now.
Okay, good. All
Sorry
right.
about that.
So no, it's okay. So and it'll be good. We'll just kind
hmm
of pick right up. So when you hit the ground in Tokyo, then
hmm
did you know I don't really know what I'm doing here, or did you go in there thinking, hey, I've had 3 years of high school Japanese. I'm good.
No, I was really intimidated. I had heard some native speakers speak before, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to communicate with people right away.
Okay.
Then
So
arriving at the airport with jet lag, it was intimidating.
So what was that whole? I mean, that's the part that I'm just fascinated by. What was that process like? Were there periods where you thought I'm never going to figure this out, or were you just so excited and immersed in the culture?
Yeah, so I'm a really prideful person, so I had to kind of say, okay, I just need to sound like an idiot and talk as much as possible.
Okay.
Um, and the person my first roommate, who was another American, he didn't speak very good Japanese, so right off the bat, I needed to speak Japanese too, so that helped a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did he try to
Um,
speak English with you?
Yeah, yeah. We were native English speakers from America,
Mhm.
and so luckily we had that. We had that. But in terms of language, I mean, it was just build on what you do know
Uh-huh.
and have as much confidence as possible in that. I mean, I always tell people that 'cause living in Japan, people are always asking me, how do I get good at English? How do I learn a new language? And it's like 70-80% confidence,
Wow.
and the rest
Okay.
is some knowledge. It's you've ever heard of irrational
Oh,
confidence? That's
absolutely.
kind of
Yeah, I hear about it in
I'm a
sports all the
super
time. Okay.
irrational confidence guy.
Okay, and it's funny now
Yeah,
to
it's
look back on
really
the times. Okay, when I've watched you in a business meeting, for example. I mean, you own that room, right? I mean, I never really realized that's part of your whole plan, right?
Oh yeah, and I've got crazy imposter syndrome going on under the surface
You
there.
do.
I have no idea what I'm doing. They're going to find out I'm a fraud. But for now, I'm just going to exude as much confidence as possible and try and take the wheel if I feel like that's what will help the meeting happen.
Okay, I
So.
love the fact. So imposter syndrome, I literally I probably deal with that once or twice a week in sessions, and I just did again yesterday. I mean, that's I think I'm gonna have to do an entire virtual couch episode on imposter syndrome. So I love hearing that you are
Oh
aware of
yeah.
that, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I feel it a lot. I didn't ever get trained as an interpreter and translator, which is now a lot of the work I do. And so when I am interacting with people who have gone through interpreter school or courses or whatever, I think, these are the people that really know the
Wow.
secrets of it, and I'm just faking my way.
Okay, that's amazing. So that reminds me then of so when we had I don't I don't think we engaged in business that first time. You and I kept in contact. We head back down there and the translator we were using was unavailable, I believe, and I remember
hmm
we were actually at a Chinese restaurant in Japan, and what was the town? Not I'm drawing a blank. It's in the
Oh, out in Torisawa,
Torisawa. Yeah, so we're there, and then we say, okay, we
yeah,
have
part of
this.
Otsuki City.
Otsuki City, we have this guy Derek that we can call, and then they were convinced that you were a Japanese um, speaker. I love that. So do you get that often?
Well, if it's the usual pleasantries and greetings and things across the telephone line, um, people have enough suspension of disbelief, might you
Mm.
say, that they're expecting the person to be Japanese, so they'll believe I'm Japanese. But my accent comes out enough.
Does it? Well, that's what I was
So.
kind of fascinated by. I remember at one time when it hit me of I wish I could learn a language well enough to then know what the American accent is, if that's makes any sense.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I can see that.
what's an American accent in Japanese? I mean, what is that?
Well, it's a lot of it's overpronouncing things.
Okay.
Japanese requires less muscle movement of the lips and the mouth
Oh
and the
wow.
tongue
Okay.
than English does.
Okay.
So when an English speaker learns Japanese, they tend to pronounce things too clearly or too strongly. Their R's are too R-y, and stuff like that is definitely common.
Okay.
And so
Do you have
you
an
just kind of have to
example?
let your mouth
Can
relax.
you give me an example? I'm dying. I want
Well,
to know
like
what this looks like. Yeah. Oh, Derek, he froze right when he was gonna do that. All right, we're gonna get him back on here. Hey,
I was, I think that was you. This one, I don't
was
think
it?
this
Was
was
it?
me this time.
Okay, the greatest part about that though is I've struggled with putting ads in the middle of a podcast, like and I'll listen to my favorite podcast, and they will like all of a sudden cut in. You literally were about to give us the example, and then everything froze. So but people probably just heard a nice ad for Eli's extracts or something like that. So, all right, you were about to
Sorry
give
about
us
that.
no, I love it. You were about to give us an example then. So here we go.
Yeah, okay. So Tony, you know how to say thank you in Japanese. Let's hear it.
Domo arigatou gozaimasu.
Hey, there you go. Beautiful. So when an American an American accent to say that you have somewhat of an accent, but you're pretty good. They'd be like domo arigato gozaimasu. The
Okay.
R,
Arr, like a
like a
little
pirate
pirate.
R.
Pirate. There you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whereas a real pronunciation would be like domo arigato gozaimasu.
Ah.
Arigato. There's
Okay.
a less R and more L and D in the R. So stuff like that. I mean,
No,
I
that's
can't give you a perfect
no,
native,
that's
but there
great.
you
That
go.
no, that makes a lot of sense. And that to tell you another funny one of the first things I realized, and I want to get back to what your experience was, but I remember sitting and hearing my friend Yoshida-san when he was doing some translation, and I'm hearing him continually go ano ano, and finally
Yeah.
after I say, "Hey Tom, what does ano mean?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about," and then finally I think basically he said it was the Japanese way of going was that right?
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those interjections that you use as a crutch to kind of tide you over till you know what you want to say.
I love
Hmm.
that though that even that is not a universal is not universal. Is
No,
that
exactly. It's definitely not. And you'll hear Americans trying to think of what to say in Japanese, but they'll be like, and that it
yeah.
sounds non-native.
And then
Yeah.
okay, so then the Japanese guys are saying to each other, "What does mean?" Right? I mean that's
Yeah, they'll get it, but yeah, it'll definitely not sound like a Japanese which there's plenty of even among native speakers, sure.
okay. I love that. All right, so can I ask you some of the cheesy questions about learning a language?
Shoot, man.
Okay,
Yeah.
so when did it finally? Do you feel like it clicked and you've got this? I mean, how far? How long in are we talking?
I'd say after spending 5 or 6 months in Japan,
Okay.
for the first time, that after about 6 months, I felt like I could say what I needed to say.
Okay.
I was the things I was doing in life. I generally mastered the things I needed to be able to say for those,
Hmm.
but I still needed a lot of help. People needed to dumb things down to speak to me.
Oh,
So
gotcha.
my listening, I still needed to get a lot better, and listening still. I mean, it's an eternal struggle.
Is it?
And
Okay.
if people get completely slang, completely native, they don't think about a foreign listener at all. I can still miss some things, but things get better over time.
Okay. And then some of the things I've heard before is, I mean, do you remember a time where did you start to dream in Japanese?
Yeah, definitely. That happens over time. I'd say the first couple years, I spent 2 years here, then I went back to the States, and then I came back again 13 years from, before now.
Okay.
Ago is what we say in English. And
Before now.
so
Okay.
13 years ago, I started to hear I started to hear more Japanese in my dreams then.
Okay. Yeah. And then is it also true? I try to wrap my head around. I've heard that you go from having to think of what the translation versus just responding. Is there some truth there?
Yeah, definitely. The brain reaches a point where you're not thinking okay, this is what was Japanese. I have to convert this to English so I can think about it. Your brain kind of just starts to think of them as the things that are being discussed as concepts,
Yeah.
and
So
you can
so
just go into whatever.
in your business, I mean, and you do translation is it every day? Is that safe to say or
I
no?
wouldn't say every day. This week I'm translating, interpreting. Um, but yeah, I'd say I translate frequently.
Okay. And so
Definitely.
then do you ever have struggles going back and forth?
No, not switching or anything like that anymore.
Okay.
Only struggles I'll have is I'm in an industry, I'm in medical devices and pharmaceutical type industries, so it'll just be, I'm trying to say, polypropylene butyl or something, in Japanese, and trying to remember how that's said or whatever.
Okay, and then and I do know when I've heard you, in action, I'm trying to pick out words that I can understand, and every now and again, you just use the English word, but you make it sound Japanese. True?
Yeah, there are a lot of cognates, a lot of
Okay.
words that come from English into Japanese, but if you say them with perfect English pronunciation, a lot of people will miss them.
Okay.
So if I want to say computer,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to say computer.
Okay.
Yeah, and it almost sounds like I'm making fun of a Japanese,
It does. It
speaker of
does.
English, right?
Yeah.
But really, it's because that's the way the ear in Japan is gonna hear it best. So I want
I
the client to hear it best.
so I started in computers. I remember going over and hearing. I still say when somebody's talking about a PC, it's PC, right?
Or pasokon
Pasokong.
is a common one. Pasokon, personal computer.
Oh,
They
personal.
abbreviate to
Okay.
pasokon, but PC definitely, yeah, you'll hear
Okay.
PC.
All right. And then I think the particular type of computer at the time that was big in Japan was NEC, and it was Enishi. So I was guessing
Yep.
that. Okay. Right. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. There's no C pronunciation in the original Japanese alphabet. It's sa, shi, su, se, so. So just that is an SH for some reason.
I love it. I love it. I do. So, all right. So then you find yourself in any those first 2 years. I mean, does anything come to mind as like embarrassing or funny situations with the language, or people sometimes say, "Oh, I was talking to an old lady and I basically told her to jump off a cliff," and do you have any of those kind of things?
I didn't have any specific of where I said something awful or that I didn't mean to say. There was one time where actually a guy from China made dinner for my friend and I, and we were speaking to each other in Japanese, the us and the guy from China, and he made this dinner, and I really didn't like it, and I couldn't get it all down. He made this weird seafood spaghetti or something, and I was bad at conjugating. You have to kind of conjugate adjectives here. And I
Okay.
meant to say it was delicious, and then in a Freudian slip or whatever you want to say, I said it was not delicious
All right.
in
And you're
Japanese.
smiling at him as you say that.
Yeah, and then I quickly realized my mistake, and he's like, but you spoke the truth. You didn't like it. It was a funny,
Oh, I have to tell
situation.
you, I mean, when you say that there was something you couldn't get down, I mean, at this day and age, I feel like that shocks me, Derek. I mean, I can't wait to get into the food portion of the interview because I feel like you are quite the foodie, right?
I like some food, but I don't eat. There are several things I don't like to eat. No, I just avoid, but
Right.
definitely.
Okay, all right, and we're going to get to that because I don't even know if I believe you that there are things that you don't like to eat.
Oh, it's plenty.
Right. So, but so then when you get back to the U.S., did you? I'm curious. Every now and again you hear the people come back and they say, "What's the English word?" And I used to always say, "I think they're just making that up. They're just trying to look cool, right?" But did you struggle with that going back to
No,
English?
and I'm sort of in your same camp there. Either they're trying to sound like they were so great at the other language, or they're just stupid. You generally don't forget your native language, right? And I just had this thing a few minutes ago where I said ago instead of saying ago, I said from before. But most people don't forget their native language, right?
Right, right. Okay. Now, when you came back to the U.S., then was it hey, that was a neat experience. File that away. Japanese was fun. I like to eat sushi. And now where's my apple pie and baseball? Or were you thinking I want to go back?
Yeah, so I was ready to get back. I was ready to get back to the U.S. when I did go home, but I pretty quickly, realized I wanted to stay connected to Japan somehow.
Okay.
And so it just happened right when I got back that a friend said, "Hey, you can go work in Las Vegas as a tour guide
Okay.
for Japanese tourists, and it's a chance to keep speaking Japanese and making some money before you go into college or whatever."
Yeah.
So I did that.
Okay. Where'd
I
you
went to
take them on tours? What were you doing?
Yeah, so we would be like the local tour operators for all of these major tour companies, from Japan. I would take them on just tours of Las Vegas, take them to Grand Canyon a lot of the time, Zion National Park, Bryce Canyon, Monument Valley, Death Valley sometimes out in California. So
Okay.
yeah, it was around the Southwest.
How long did you do that?
I did that. So I got back to the U.S. in 2000 in September. No, in yeah September. Did that starting almost immediately. Like 2 days after I was back, I was alone in Las Vegas. Starting this job,
Wow.
and I did that until probably January 2002, something like that. After
Okay.
9/11, there was no tourism for a couple months, and so
Oh wow.
I quickly ran out of money and just kind of went back to where I was from, Salt Lake area,
Yeah.
and yeah,
What did and I'm boy, some of these are gonna be probably stereotypical questions, right? But
yeah.
what did you feel like the typical Japanese experience was with Las Vegas? I mean, that's a pretty funny place to
Yeah.
say, hey, this is America, right? Um, all these
Yeah.
hotels and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, it still is, I'm sure, but at the time it was, they had direct flights coming in from Japan. I mean, it was a real boom, I think, for tourists from Japan. And it was the average thing was you'd get there, a guy like me would go pick him up at the airport, check him into the hotel, try to sell him a few optional tours so I could get my $10 commission off each one. Um, and then if it was a tour, out to Grand Canyon or somewhere, it would be, it would be usually a 3-day tour.
Okay,
I'd be the driver, the guide,
everything.
everything,
Okay,
busboy, and the typical experience for them would be to leave Las Vegas early one morning and then drive like 6 hours out to the Grand Canyon, and they would just be, in disbelief at how long they had to ride in the car,
okay.
and just stuff like that. Steak dinners every night.
Do you remember?
Sometimes ride horses.
Okay. Do you remember kind of were there some typical responses that you found pretty funny about when you talk about in the car for so long, or what were some of the normal responses you would get?
Well, yeah, a lot of people couldn't believe that I would be driving for 3 or 4 hours without any rest or anything.
Uh huh.
And so what I would do is I would actually play a joke where I would close my eye that was facing them and keep my other eye on the road, and they'd think I'd like fallen asleep. I was 21. I mean, I was doing so many stupid things.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, as a customer service worker.
Sure.
But other things would be like steak dinners. We'd have these massive steaks that would be served to these grandmas from Japan, and they didn't want to waste food, so they'd be
Yeah.
trying to pack things away, and I'm just like, don't eat it all. You don't need to.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
That triggered a memory. We had some my Japanese business partners here in the Sacramento area at one point, and took them to the Claim Jumper restaurant. And I mean, everybody wanted to hold the plate up here and get a picture with like had the portion size, you know. And then I remember
Yes.
bringing one of our mutual Japanese friends here, and we went to a big barbecue place, and they served just the water in one of those mason jars, and they set it down for him, and he's ready to parse it out to everybody else, you know.
Right.
And we're like, no,
It's
that's your
his
own.
portion.
Yeah, that's your personal mason jar, which it was blown away. And then just for fun, we ordered him. It had a full rack of ribs, a chicken breast, and a steak, I think, and just to blow his mind, you know. And but,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was a fun thing. It was fun to see the eyes as big as saucers looking at this meal, and they thought, if I don't pack this away, I'm gonna be committing a serious faux pas. It was a look of horror on these
Yeah.
people's faces. They
Now,
liked it though.
well, then as I say that, I think, wow, you know, how jaded am I though? Where I'm saying, isn't that funny that we can waste that much food, you know?
Yeah,
And now you're over in Japan where I can't even find a garbage can half the time. You know, I mean, people are so
yeah,
just, they don't waste. Is that the case?
yeah. There's a lot less waste, I'd say. In Japan, usually when you're served a meal, you go ahead and clean your whole plate. They might bring you more if you ask for it, but you tend to do it all, eat it all if you can.
Okay.
Uh, but I'm trying to avoid that just because I'm getting too fat. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's the general rule.
Well, and I did just have I was trading messages with my old friend Yoshida-san about Thanksgiving, and he said that he was able to actually find a butterball turkey at a Costco. So both of those
Yeah.
things alone were kind of pretty funny. But he said he didn't have the oven that was big enough to cook it. Or
Hmm.
I mean, is that the case? Do you?
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, the average Japanese house does not have a large oven. Usually, it's just an oven function on your microwave that'll actually heat up. A convection type oven,
Wow.
but it's not large. Or you'll have like a little toaster. So what I did was, in order to make Thanksgiving happen a few times, I got the big turkey fryer sent over from the U.S.
You
and
did.
I just find the right oil and I'll do the deep fried turkey.
And then is that a hit in the neighborhood, or do people think you're kind of nuts?
Yeah, well, I learned a while ago, you might be barbecuing out front, but people aren't usually interested in Japan in just getting your food, and like trying it.
Yeah.
Like, there's not as much of a tradition of, hey, I'm cooking this meat, here, have some of it. But people that ate it really did enjoy it. Yeah, it was good.
Okay.
Brined it,
Yeah.
fried it, did it.
So then going back to Vegas, then what brought you out of Vegas, and then what was I don't really know if I remember the story of when did you meet your wife and what took you back to Japan.
Yeah, so my wife was a an exchange. She's from Japan. She was an exchange student at UNLV
Okay.
studying hotel management, and with the student visa, they could work some hours in their studied industry, in their same industry. So she would work as a tour guide,
Oh.
and we both would be waiting for planes, or kind of in the same circles, and that's how we met.
Okay. And so and so were you at when things started to look like I could go live in Japan? I mean, was that pretty exciting, or did you feel like she would end up living in the U.S.? What were your thoughts at first?
Yeah, so when we started talking about getting married, it was mostly, yeah, we'll be here in the U.S.
Okay.
So a lot of false pretenses by me getting her to marry me,
Yeah.
and yeah, we ended up getting married a couple years after meeting, and then in 2004, about a year after getting married, I decided I wanted to study Japanese politics, and so I said, let's move from the States and go to Japan.
Okay. All right. Now this is going to be a fun topic here. So what got you
Yeah.
into Japanese politics?
Well, I'd had a few Japanese politicians come and be on my tours with me,
Okay.
and sometimes they'd just assign me to a couple of people, and then it'd be like a VIP tour where I just took them everywhere, and politicians had come a couple times that way, and I just chatted them up about what's Japanese politics all about, and they'd tell me. And then I had a chance to interpret at the Salt Lake 2002 Olympics in Salt Lake.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and it was really a terrible assignment to put me on the job when I think about it, because I'd never really done a ton of interpreting, but they had me interpret for the mayors of Salt Lake City and the mayor of Matsumoto, Japan, which is the sister city.
Wow.
And I had a really good time doing that. I felt like I was successful when I got the mayor's joke across into Japanese, and everybody laughed at the same time. I was like, "That's it. That's what I'm going for."
Do you remember what the joke? Do you remember what the joke was?
No, it was okay. So the mayor was Rocky Anderson
Yeah.
of Salt Lake. He's kind of a fun mayor. He was, really character, and but it wasn't a great joke. He just said, "Man, I'd like to switch jobs with you," to the the mayor from Japan. Like, I'm so busy. This is such a crazy time.
Yeah.
Just kind of something like that.
Okay.
But any little quip in that situation is just riotous laughter, because it's such a serious thing to have these meetings. So anyway, I had that experience, and I started thinking, okay, I want to study Japanese politics, maybe become a U.S. Diplomat.
Okay.
Who knows Japan, be a Japan hand. That was kind of the very poorly planned idea at the time.
Okay. And I have to real quick when you talk about people come on your tours and you had these Japanese VIPs. I mean, what were the equivalent? In the U.S. Did you have any movie stars or athletes or that sort of thing?
There were a couple athletes. And not super famous, but the politicians too. Nobody crazy famous. It'd be like the equivalent of like a congressman or a senator maybe from the U.S. Nothing super, but somebody that at the time, as a 21-year-old, who'd never met anybody big from Japan, I was like, wow, this is the most important person ever. Kind of
Okay. Yeah.
reaction.
So then,
Yeah,
all
but it
right.
was great.
Was your wife excited that you wanted to move back?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to remember.
Yeah.
I'm so self-centered. I don't think about how anybody else feels about situations.
Well, that's a whole other podcast, by the way. We'll have you back
It
on
really
for that
is.
one, right? Yeah.
I think she was. I think she was okay with it. But I do. She went back. We went back and ended up. She ended up working and having a good experience there. But she might have been sort of surprised that I decided I wanted to do that. But the part of the deal was I want to go to a Japanese university.
Ah.
So that's kind of, I think, how I sold it.
Sold it. Okay, I love it. Yeah.
That never happened.
Yeah, it never happened. Okay, so you moved back. Did you go right back to? I mean, did you move to Hachioji, where you are now?
Yeah, so my wife's family was from there, so we went and lived with my in-laws to start out.
How was that?
Without any money. Yeah, it was an experience. I mean, I had lived in Japan, but I had never lived in a Japanese family,
Okay.
and so that's
What
another level
what
by
yeah,
far.
what were the big differences? I mean, what was that like?
Well, stuff like, a traditional Japanese household, a son-in-law is not going to be trying to wash the dishes or open up the fridge and start cooking stuff.
Really?
Yeah, things like that were probably a shock to the in-laws. And um, what else? I mean, just little nuances. Just how we interacted, trying to stay out of discussions my wife and her mom might be having about stuff.
Okay.
It was just how to live in the neighborhood, function with everybody.
Well, so,
That was
well, I'm curious. So, when I would go over there, I mean, we would, as Americans, I think we would just assume that, hey, we're the fun-loving Americans, and everybody's excited to have us here. And then my Japanese business partner would kind of tell us at times that, oh, you can dial it down a little bit. And I remember the trying to really, I think we hear, hey, there's some cultural differences, and they really are significant, and but I think we would always think, yeah, but we're Americans. I mean, come on, it's no big deal. I mean, but do you feel like is there a big difference there culturally?
Yeah, definitely,
Okay,
definitely there is, and it's true. You can most almost every situation here. You can play the yeah, but I'm a foreigner card.
okay,
You can put it bluntly. You can behave badly, and
yeah,
people will give you the benefit of the doubt, or you can break certain rules or not have certain manners, and get by. But it's the opportunity loss that you sustain when you do that. That's what you should think about. If you can learn one little cultural custom that
yeah.
you can master, if you always bow well or you always give your business card
That's the one.
skillfully.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's that wins you major points because the expectation level for you is zero. They
Okay.
expect you to know nothing. They expect a complete barbarian, right? So you
Yeah.
just step in and do one little thing, and they're like, "Wow, this guy is amazing."
That's funny when you
Yeah,
talk about the business. So the business card one really was. I'm holding a business card now, but I mean, it is like, I mean, it is such a here it is, and you're handing it forward, and right.
yeah, it's huge. I mean, well, you face your name towards them so they can read it. You hand it with two hands,
Uh huh.
and when they hand their card, you hold with your right and grab with theirs with your left, and do a nice little simultaneous switch. That makes people feel good.
And then you act extremely impressed with this card, like you've never seen anything this amazing and wonderful, right?
That's You gaze down at it like it's the treasure of the East that you've never seen before, and it's like, wow, okay, great, so nice, so nice to meet you.
Yeah.
It's good. I mean, because it's a person, it's a representation of that person's name,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's a real respectful thing to treat that card nicely.
I,
So if you can
I
master one thing like that,
Oh, and so I remember our guy had us he translated our names and stuff in Japanese, put it on the back of the card, and so I mean, and it was boy, we would present it in English, and then he would Yoshida-san would say a bunch of things, get really excited, everybody would flip the card over, and then oh my gosh, it was like the greatest day ever, right?
the big unveiling.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, that's great. That's great stuff. And the fact that your card was in Japanese on the back signified, just you're trying to come along with the program here. You're
Yeah.
you're getting along with folks.
Yeah. Are there other, I like how you say if you really just kind of focus on even one or two things, it'll make a big deal. What are some things that you think that would be beneficial for somebody to know or do first time over in Japan, for example?
Well, yeah. Well, the continuation of the business card thing is that once you've got the card from the person, if you're having a meeting, you want to place the card in front of you on the table
Mm,
and not play around with it. Not stick it immediately in your pocket after getting it. Maybe
yeah.
keep it out as though it's something that needs to be honored, for a little longer. That's definitely a good move. There's a story, and it's probably apocryphal, but they say that there was a huge investment deal on the line, and these Americans came to meet with the Japanese, counterparts. And when one of them got their counterpart's business card, he absentmindedly later in the meeting was picking his teeth with it or something,
Oh,
and lost the deal. The story goes that
I
it
love it. I
was so
love that
bad.
there's urban legends like that. I love that. I
Oh
had no idea.
yeah, And it's probably a kernel of truth, and but it's true. But I'd say, yeah. What other things? Okay, so you have a meal with business clients or with just friends, anybody in Japan, anybody who you want to show respect to in Japan. You have a meal with those people. There's always going to be a toast to start the meal.
Kampai.
You're not going to, right?
Yeah.
The kampai, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to start eating. You're not going to start drinking till everybody's ready, and there's a little ceremony. Hey, thanks everybody, and you'll have the kampai, which is great. But what you want to do is you want to pour the drinks for your want to show respect to, right? So you'll hold the bottle of beer or whatever it is with both hands, and you'll nudge it towards them like, hey, I want to pour your drink, and they're going to pick up their glass and they're going to accept your drink, and they're going to pour for you. Somebody's going to pour for you, and when somebody pours for you, you're going to hold your cup up off the table with one hand under it, one hand holding it, and you're gonna thank them, for pouring your drink. Little things like that are gonna go a super long way.
Oh, I love it. All right, I almost feel like I have to apologize and say, hey, go on my little ADD journey with me here about Japanese things, because I just thought of 8 other things that I want to ask you about. Let me throw. One is the very first time I'm there, first time ever, and we immediately go to this a ramen restaurant. And I had already read in a book that you can slurp your soup. I mean, you slurp your ramen, you pick up your bowl, and you drink it, right?
Yeah,
sure. And so within seconds, I pick it up and I dump it all over my lap. And so I dump the whole thing on. And so I don't think I've ever been more embarrassed in my life. And I'd already asked for a fork at one point, which they didn't have, so I'm already 0 for 2. And then I go into a bathroom, and then I'm got my pants off, and I'm trying to wash them in the sink, and a woman walks in. And apparently it was like a community bathroom. I mean,
it's a comedy of errors. My goodness.
That was, yeah.
They're like, what's wrong with this guy? He just dumps his ramen on his lap.
But then, so is that real? I mean, do you really slurp? I mean, is that, you hear these stereotypes of, is that real? Does that show?
Oh, yeah, you slurp ramen noodles, but it's the noodles you slurp. So the bowl stays on the table for now.
Okay. Point. I wish I would have known that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely that prevents lap dumping. And then what you want to do is you want to eat the noodles, and you'll have a big old spoon that you can scoop the broth out with. But what you're doing when you slurp the noodles, there's a reason for it. It cools the noodles down. It's running air over the noodles while they're coming into your mouth to not burn your mouth.
Okay.
And so that's the reason for that. But yeah, you slurp them up, you don't have to make a sound that's abnormally loud or. Just slurp them up. I mean, you see what they're doing next to you and do that.
Yeah. And then my other train of thought here was, and I know we've been at places with you where we aren't sitting on a chair, we're sitting on the floor. And
definitely.
And you watch the American. We can't do it. I mean, how long did it take you to be able to sit there for hours, cross-legged or Indian style?
Yeah, you start developing little techniques, I think. But the big thing is, if it's a formal meal or whatever, you want to start out on your knees, like you're kneeling before your sensei in the karate dojo or whatever. You want to start out on your knees, but if you stay there any amount of time, your legs are going to fall asleep like really fast, and then it's going to be like mad pins and needles while you're trying to talk to people, and it's going to be really uncomfortable. So you can switch to sitting, on your haunches pretty quickly after that. But you want to switch positions. You want to try and keep your back straight. Is one of the things that helps me a lot, and that helps to stave off some of the fatigue.
Sure.
But if you have bad knees or you have bad hips or whatever, you might want to tell your host or whoever, I could use a table seat if we got one.
Okay. I never even thought about that, quite frankly. Yeah.
And people are getting old in Japan. The population in Japan's aging a lot, and it's harder for the older people who grew up here to sit on the mats, cross-legged. So yeah, more table restaurants lately.
So let me jump in. Where time is flying here. The politics. So you're interested in Japanese politics. You move over to Japan, and then and what happens next in the political realm?
Right. So I wanted to study politics at a Japanese university, but I hadn't planned anything. I was completely the wrong time of year to start, applying or any of that. And so what I did was I looked up who was the local member of the national parliament, and I, saw his name and the address of his office, and I just kind of went down there unannounced and knocked on the door and said, I'm an American. My wife's from here. I want to learn about Japanese politics. Will you let me volunteer? And they didn't call me back for about 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, yeah, they're not going to let it happen. And then they did, and they let me come do it. And so I worked as a volunteer, kind of, with this politician's office for a couple months, and then he hired me as an aide to just do the regular work with him.
How long did you do that?
So I did that for about full time. I did that about a year and a half.
Wow.
And then I started going to school, and after that I still have always helped out ever since. When there's an election, I'll go help out, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, but since then I got my own career.
So do you feel like you were? I mean, did you scratch that itch as far as learning what you wanted to know about Japanese politics? Was it kind of neat to see the behind the scenes?
Oh yeah, it was a dream. It was really fun. It was not, hey, we have this American, we're going to show him around and let him look at some political situations. It was, you work for me now, you do this work.
Wow.
So just being the regular grunt political aide, got to see all of the stuff that happens and learned a lot about how it works.
What are the
So
are there major differences that you can kind of speak to in Japanese versus American politics?
Well, Japanese politics is much more dependent on a personal connection between the voter and the politician.
Okay.
In the U.S., you'll be more likely to vote on the issues, or because you're part of a particular political tribe, or whatever, right? Especially these days. But in Japan, it's more, I know that guy, or that guy is, that guy's friends with my cousin, or that guy came to my grandma's funeral, or it's more of a personal connection that says, I trust this person to have my local area's interests at heart. This is the guy I want or the lady I want in office, to represent us. So it's still ideological but it's more personal.
Okay. Yeah. And do you have? Is there the normal two? I mean, how many parties are in Japan?
Oh, there's several parties. There's one party that's been largely dominant since after World War II.
Oh, wow.
The LDP, as it's called, the Liberal Democratic Party, which is neither liberal nor democratic, they always say.
Okay.
It's kind of the conservative, more business-friendly party.
Uh-huh.
And they've dominated politics, but they've had several different opposition parties and minor parties. But what they have here is proportional representation. So it's not always just one person against another. It's not just a two-person race in each district. It's multi-parties, and even if a party doesn't win a particular district, they have at-large seats, so that they'll represent even very minor parties in the national government. So anyway, it's more diverse, less one-on-one negative campaign type battles.
Okay, that's kind of fascinating. So you don't see the smear campaigns or the commercials where this person beats their kids, that kind of thing. None of that?
A lot less of that. I'd say the average Japanese voter is much less affected or is turned off more by negative campaigning. They want to know what the person's about, not what they're not about.
It's kind of refreshing.
It is, but it's not perfect. There's a lot of problems with the system here, but I like that part of it. It's not a two-party system, and that eliminates some of the negativity.
Yeah, so do you still keep an eye on U.S. politics? I mean, you've been there now, 13 years? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, this time around it's been 13 years, and I do keep a close eye on U.S. politics, and I gotta say, since I'm not there on the ground, talking to family or coworkers all the time, I get a lot of, my info from news or from Twitter or from Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
And I probably have a skewed view of some things. It's probably, but yeah, it definitely doesn't feel super positive to me right now.
Yeah. and so then, are you ideally hoping to, I mean, what's your future in politics in Japan?
Yeah. So, I would like to be useful to my community. And as part of that, I would, I'm thinking I might, get into city level politics.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when that, and that requires, some steps and things, but that's kind of the idea. I think that would be a fun thing, and I think I could do a good job.
So someday, this podcast, we will look back and I'm speaking to the Prime Minister of Japan.
Definitely not.
um,
Definitely not.
okay, so and I just I have so many random thoughts that just went through my head about let me one quick one is I want to respond to you in Japanese as if I was in Japan, and you would never acknowledge my attempts in Japanese, and now I can find out why, Derek. What did I was it is
Yeah. Yeah, let me cut to the chase with that. I mean, I just have I just get a really awkward no feeling in my heart when I have to communicate in a language that is less effective than another language
okay, that makes
for
sense.
the two people for me and the person I'm talking with.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
So, and that's a terrible thing because it means I'm never helping anybody out with like getting better at a language. It's totally self-centered. I like to think, no, we need to get this. We have a purpose. We need to achieve the purpose. But there's just an awkwardness that I think, when I was first working, doing service, they always said, even if you're both Americans, you got to both speak Japanese to each other.
And that's what I was
And that
asking
to me was
earlier.
the
So this makes more
stupidest thing.
sense. Okay, yeah, because to you, you're like, hey, we've
Yes.
got things we have to do. So that's cute that you're going, hi, hi, but come on, we got stuff to do.
Yeah. But it's really just that I'm a selfish person. That's really what it comes down. I don't
Oh,
want to feel awkward and like be like, yeah,
yeah, sure,
yeah.
that's
It's
cute,
great.
right? But anyway, but I do love though. I
Yeah.
mean, when I there's this thing that I love though about when Japanese people are talking to each other, and there is more of an engagement. I feel like in the conversation via this word, it's hi, right? I mean, is that the purpose
Yeah,
of
hi.
that? Yeah, I mean, when people are, is it that I'm tracking, I'm following? I mean, is that the concept?
Yeah, hi. Hi is often translated to people as meaning yes.
Mm.
Um, but what it really means is what you have said is correct.
Ah, hi.
I'm affirming what you have said.
Okay.
And so yeah, if they say, so didn't you go to the movie yesterday? And they would say in Japan, hi, I did not. Like, yes, I did not go. What you have
Ah,
said is correct.
okay.
Which is kind of the opposite from the way English is phrased, right? You say, no, I didn't go.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's that kind of thing. Hi is very good. Yeah,
Okay.
very useful.
I like that. And then, okay, so, and did you, so kind of jumping off a little bit here. So the politics, I love that. We're going to follow, where you go in politics. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Did you have a cable access show at one time or a TV show?
Oh, I still do. Yeah,
You
I
do.
still have it.
Okay. What's it called?
It's So it's a local, yeah, it's local cable television. I live in a city of 580,000 people,
Wow.
and there is a cable TV company that's all over Japan, but they for each of their separate kind of broadcast cities or areas, they have a channel that's just for that area, right? So on that channel, I do a show that's it is like you might call it a guide to the people of Hachioji. It's the theme is you talk for about 20 minutes with somebody who's doing something interesting, who either lives or works in Hachioji.
So what, and how long have you been
And
doing that show?
it's been actually over a year now.
Wow.
We have one new episode a week. We tape once a month for 5 episodes, and then we spread them out across the weeks. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. I've done about 60 or 70 of those now. And
Wow.
just get to meet cool people and
Yeah.
ask them questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can find that on Netflix or Hulu here in the States.
It's on YouTube.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh, Derek,
You'd have to search in Japanese, but it's all over. Yeah, a ton of the episodes are on YouTube now.
okay.
It's just me talking to a person.
No, I just want you. Before I post this, I'd love for you to send me a link, and I will put that in the podcast notes. That would be a blast.
Yeah,
Right?
sure. Why not?
That'd be good. Okay. Before we disappear, talk to me about food. Then, I mean, when I go to Japan, I am counting on Derek, to take me to all kinds of good places. I trust everything he says. If we walk into a conference, if we've been doing some business and then the company that we were working with, all of a sudden they would send us into a little room and there's these bento boxes. I'm looking at Derek and I'm counting on. I trust in Derek on, yeah, eat this, this one a little weird, that sort of thing. So I mean, how is your relationship with the Japanese food?
Yeah, I mean, food's a really big percentage of my happiness in life, I think. At
Okay.
least my short-term happiness,
Mm.
right? So, I like food a lot. And when I talk about Japan to anybody from outside Japan, one of the big reasons I talk about for loving and wanting to be here all the time is the food, you know. Japanese food you can eat. Japanese food is really diverse and there's a lot of different things, but generally an average Japanese dish isn't gonna you're not gonna get tired of it so fast.
Ah,
It's not gonna overwhelm you, and so you can eat Japanese food, on the long term without getting tired of it. But yeah, there are so many aspects of Japanese food that I feel like I really need to evangelize to people about.
okay.
Things like real ramen that's not instant ramen, you
Yeah.
know? It's not poor college food for 20 cents a pack. It's like, it's a soup that a ramen shop owner has developed over like 30 years.
Wow.
And he spends 24 hours putting the broth together, and the noodles are a certain way. And it is a work of art, but it's just working people food that
Okay.
costs, $6 for a big bowl, that kind of stuff.
I love that though, and
It's
we were in Oakland for my son's basketball tournament a couple months ago, and people wanted to go find the Taco Bell, and there was this ramen shop there in downtown Oakland, and it was I had to go there, and it was amazing, and it was a unique flavor, and I mean, so I never thought about it as you are evangelizing, but that's boy, what a different experience than top ramen with my little packet that I'm dumping in the hot
Yeah.
water, right?
And
Yeah.
top ramen has its place, It's like a frozen Totino's pizza versus a really good one from a restaurant. They're both exquisite. They both have their place.
Sure.
One's for watching Fox 13 late at night. The other's for a fancy meal, but they're both great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, ramen's a big one. Another, obviously, is just sushi and sashimi, like the level of fish, just the freshness and seafood.
Well, and I
Man,
mean, when you hear people talk about sushi in America, I mean, is it kind of like okay, but you don't even understand what it's like is it different? Is it that different in Japan?
yeah, I think. Well, America, the U.S. has done stuff with sushi that Japan could have never done. That's great. Like the rolls. I mean, it's I think roll centric. In the
Absolutely.
U.S.
Yeah.
A lot of that is because the fish isn't as good, probably most of the
Gotta
time.
cover it up. Yeah.
So yeah, you got to cover it up with mayonnaise and
Deep fry it and all that. Yeah.
hot dog bits or whatever you guys are putting on sushi over there. But like, but when I was living, in Las Vegas after living in Japan, I used to love going to the all-you-can-eat sushi place and just packing away those rolls. That was great.
Yeah.
But Japan's more centered on the actual fish being augmented by the rice and the soy sauce and the wasabi. But the super fresh fish, if you go down to the Tsukiji market, the famous early
Yeah.
morning auction market in Tokyo, I'm sure you probably ended up doing that.
Also,
It's a great jet lag activity.
I was gonna say, and I used to jog there. I would run miles and miles to get there just to watch the ships come in and all that stuff. I did that. I've done that, a dozen times or more. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that if you go to one of the sushi places there, it's incredible. And the thing you want to do at least once is go to one of the shops where you don't even get to choose what you eat. It's just the
Oh,
master chef is going to make a meal for you from whatever's best that day, whatever's freshest,
wow.
and you'll get something you would have never ordered that you'll be like, that's incredible.
Okay.
And it's expensive, but that's a really good experience too.
Derek, were you? This will either ring a bell or it won't. And I apologize if I don't remember because I was so traumatized. But were you with me there? And I ate. The guy had just cut the shrimp and the tail was still moving, and I go to bring, and I thought it had calmed down, and I go to bring the piece up to my mouth, and the tail gives me one of these just smack on my hand, and I threw the thing all the way across the sushi, like the restaurant. Were you with me on that one? Or
No, I
okay.
was not there for that. That's
Okay.
great.
Yeah, I never forget that. Because it was, I mean, that's how fresh it was. I mean, this guy was moving, and then
Yeah.
now he's not, and then he gave me one more little flap of his tail though on the way into my mouth, and I lost it. I
Last
did.
nervous hurrah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not an animal rights activist by any means, but I'm also not a big like fan of the we're going to nail a squid to the
Oh,
the cutting board right now and cut it up for you. That's going to be so fresh. Yeah, I'm not super
yeah,
into that.
yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty disturbing.
Yes. And then, and when I do think about my time with you, though, it is talk about shabu shabu. What is shabu shabu, and why
Oh
is it the
yes.
greatest thing in the world?
Yes. So shabu shabu is very thinly sliced beef or pork usually, and various vegetables. And then there's just a really lightly flavored broth. It's just flavored a little bit with kelp with some seaweed
Mm.
and maybe some chicken stock or something. And you get that pot boiling and you'll throw some vegetables and things in to just kind of get going simmering and you'll grab these strips, these big, thinly sliced pieces of meat, right? You'll
Mm.
dip them into the boiling broth. You'll swish it around, and it will immediately get, basically cooked through. And then you dip it in some kind of a sauce and eat
Oh
it, right?
man, yeah,
Incredible.
yeah. And we found in
Yeah, it's an
Hachioji there's a all-you-can-eat shabu shabu restaurant that we would just go.
right. That was our other jam, other than the kebab place. That wasn't even like super high quality meat, but what you'll find is you can take a pretty low quality cut of meat and cut it thin, and it's pretty great.
Yeah, and did you
So.
tell me that? I mean, did they had their eyes on us when we would have a few Americans in that place? I mean, was there like a time limit, or they would cut us off?
Yeah, yeah. I think it was usually 90 minutes.
Okay.
You can stuff yourself for 90 minutes. Don't forget to get some ice cream, and then you're done.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a meal, right?
yeah,
You just roll.
yeah. Do you miss
And
any?
I'm finding
Oh,
as I
go
get
ahead.
older, obviously it's less that, and I'm trying to find something a little more, fancy, and it's less portion, but it's still fun to do.
Yeah. Do you miss anything from the U.S. as food wise, or can you pretty much find anything you want there?
These days, the last decade, Costco, a lot more American food and Mexican food here. Even you can get some
Okay.
Chipotle type
Really?
burrito places in Tokyo.
Okay.
What you can't do is like a real authentic Mexican taco cart.
Okay.
Just like set up on the side of the street. For me, I'm from Salt Lake City, so it's that old Sears parking lot at like 8th South and State Street with just like these carts. Some of them have a health code permit, some of them don't. Those are
Yeah.
the ones.
Now,
It's
okay. And have you ever thought about honestly about bringing something like that to Japan? I mean, do you get those thoughts from time to time?
I used to get those thoughts. I also used to get thoughts of starting a ramen shop in the U.S.
Oh yeah.
But on both counts, it came down to making the honest, you know, honestly conceding to myself that I don't want to work at a ramen shop all day,
Okay. Fair point. Right.
or I don't want to run a Mexican restaurant or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Just to have
If somebody
the
wanted to
food.
run it for me, yeah, I didn't have to pay them, then that would be great. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So at this point, I mean, do you feel like, and I don't know if this is a fair question to ask you, but I mean, 13 years in, I mean, do you feel like that you are there? That is your place. You are gonna live there forever. I mean, is
Yeah.
that kind of the thought process?
Yeah, that's the thought process, definitely.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm pretty self-aware that I like it here better than anywhere.
Mm.
And I miss my family and friends, and I miss the desert,
Mm.
and I miss Mexican taco carts. But other than that, life is really good over here. It's a
Yeah.
very safe place. Food's great and everything. So yeah, I'm here.
Hey, so
And
I mean, and maybe real quick before we go to that part where, I mean,
yeah.
every time I have been there, and I've probably been there, I don't know, 40, 50 times, people always comment on how safe it is, and I do
Mhm.
feel that. Why do you think that's the case? What is that all about?
Well, the average person has a lot less propensity to break the law.
Okay.
Um, there's a pretty solid, you know, lowest level of income or poverty level.
Okay.
There's not a ton of, I mean, there's poverty here, but there's not this, there's not widespread poverty that would kind of lead to more crime, right?
Mm.
People get enough to get by in most cases, and it's just culturally, I think,
Okay.
it's just a huge shame to break the law and to do something violent.
Uh-huh.
So.
So, and there was
You
always
tend to.
the joke that I would hear is that if you dropped $100 bill on the sidewalk, you could come back tomorrow and it would still be there. I mean, that's an
Yeah.
exaggeration, or
Well, no, I mean, it would probably be at the local police box. Somebody would have turned it in. I've lost my wallet probably 3 times here. It's always come back intact.
really?
Never had much in it to begin with, unfortunately. But it's people are really honest here. Sometimes when a kid finds like a 10 yen, a 10 cent about coin,
Uh-huh.
their parents might take them all the way to the police box to turn it in, just to show them, it's important to be honest. If it's not something yours, don't, if it's not yours, don't keep it.
Wow.
It's cool.
Yeah.
The cultural thing, without going into it, too long, is that it's not in American movies and things. The rebel is kind of the protagonist. They're kind of the guy you're behind, and there's some of that in Japan, but it's not like laws were made to be broken.
Okay.
There isn't that whole set. It's
Yeah.
more we have laws and that makes everybody happy overall.
Gotcha. No, that makes more sense. That's kind of interesting. That is. Hey, do you want to talk a little bit about? I mean, I don't even know if you want or need to plug your business. I mean, do you have more work than you could ever need, or?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I just have a business that caters to medical device or pharmaceutical companies who want to do business from, make a product in Japan, sell it in the U.S. or vice versa.
How can
I'm
people
doing
find
okay
you?
though.
Yeah, how can people find you?
Yeah. I have a company called Jataki Company.
I see you're wearing a Jataki shirt, by the way. Is that right?
I am wearing a Jataki shirt. That's right. It's kind of hard to read the font, probably.
No, I dig it.
Jataki. Yeah, if you look up Jataki, it'll show up.
Yeah, and what is
Yeah.
and remind me, what does Jataki mean?
It's just the name of a waterfall near where I was, near the mountain, Mount Takao, where I live.
Okay, I can't let you get away. Then what's that? I'm sorry, I cut you off. What's that?
It just means snake waterfall. Yeah,
Snake waterfall. You just reminded me of. So you've got this Mount Takao, and you get out and do a little bit of running. And I never. I mean, it makes me laugh every time when I think about. I mean, there are monkeys in the woods there, right?
That's right. Yeah, and I thought somebody was joking with me when I first learned that living in Japan. They're like, no, there are monkeys in these woods, and I'm like, yeah.
And we're talking. This is
It's
right
like
out of your backyard.
Or one of those.
Yeah.
No, Summer of the Monkeys or one of those books, where that's not possible. They had to be from a zoo. No, but yeah, there's a native Japanese macaque. It's called. It's a kind of monkey that lives out in the woods here.
So have you
You'll
been
see
out
them
on a
once in a
hike?
while.
Yes, you've been on a hike, and there's a monkey all of a sudden.
Yeah, I've run into 7 or 8 monkeys together, on multiple occasions, and they're pretty cool. But if you look them in the eye or if you show your teeth, they get really mad. They'll start, showing their teeth at you, and
Oh man.
they'll get aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's frightening. That is.
it is. Yeah.
Oh,
No, they're
Derek.
cool though. They're mostly just cute. They got these little red butts. They're
Okay.
cute.
Oh, they're those kind. Okay. Yeah. Derek, this
Yeah,
has
those
been
kind.
this has been a pleasure, and I know when we're done, I'm going to think of 10 other questions I wish I would have asked you. But I appreciate you taking the time. You were pretty busy during the political season there in Japan, and I know I was dying to get you on. I'd love to have you on again to talk about the self-centeredness. No, I'm just kidding. Right?
Absolutely. I need some therapy, man. We can do it on the podcast, right?
That's right. Yeah, real
Good.
live therapy. No, but I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'm just fascinated by the idea. And I did a mailbag podcast yesterday that I posted, and just one of the concepts is, or one of the questions I get a lot are people who ask about job change and career change, and I think a lot of people they will think about something like, I would love to go live in a foreign country, but it's just not possible. So, I mean, I think that's the part where I just was so fascinated by what your experience has been like. And it was something that I'm sure that there was, or I wonder, was there a part of you when you first started thinking, I want to go live in Japan, that was like, people don't just go do that? I mean, was there a little bit of hesitation there?
There was a little bit. I mean, I'd experienced living in Japan before, so I had some confidence that I could do it. But there were a couple of really big factors, none of which speaks well of me. One was that I had nothing really great going on anyway,
Okay.
that I needed to leave behind.
Yeah.
I just had a really great wife who was from Japan, so that wasn't going to be a problem. And the second thing, I would say it was that I had great infrastructure around me. My wife, my wife's family, the in-laws, all these people who helped me to get kind of assimilated into Japanese society. Without that, I wouldn't have gone to neighborhood association stuff and gotten to know my neighbors and become part of the community.
Gotcha.
So, that infrastructure I was very lucky to have.
Gotcha. So, I mean, it was just that everything kind of came together, fell together, right?
Yeah, I feel that. I definitely feel that way. It's certainly not any ability or anything of mine. It's mostly just having a really good environment, I think.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and I would love to have you back at some point. And now you are the virtual couch man in Japan. So the next nuclear reactor accident, the next earthquake, the next tsunami, we're gonna go to our man.
On the scene.
We're gonna go to our man Derek. Is that fair? Scene. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely, man. Anytime.
Okay. Hey, absolutely great having you on the podcast. I will touch base with you again soon. And thanks for being on the virtual couch.
All right. Great. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Derek. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.